Hello, hello, hello. Everybody, it's Tuesday, 11:30. I got my boy Matt Thomas about to hop on with me.
How you doing?
What up, man?
Life is good. It is definitely winter.
Yeah, it's snowing.
Yeah. I always have found that winter makes real estate closings interesting for one reason or another. Either water makes it somewhere it shouldn't, which is never a good thing. But more importantly, it often gives buyers like this strange sense of, oh, it's lasting through the snow. It'll last through anything. So I had a walk through this morning and they felt ultra confident in their home, which is a nice thing.
Yeah, there's two problems I never wish on anyone: water problems and car
Oof.
trouble.
Both equally nightmarish and usually unexpected in your day.
Exactly. Yeah, and they're always very difficult to fix.
Yeah. You're speaking to somebody who in the last 2 months dealt with flooding in the basement and a little fender bender on a vehicle. So just wrap them all up at once, would you?
Can we talk about social media?
Yeah, dive right in, baby.
So tell me, what if you had three things for someone like me who's trying to grow their social media presence, what would your three tips be to grow your presence the fastest?
Number one, I think rethink how you're thinking about presence. For me, I have never focused on trying to meet 1 million followers or grow the biggest following possible. I focus on sincere relationships within the follower base that I have. So define presence as making a meaningful impact on your follower base or establishing a meaningful connection with certain people. And I think you set a better baseline for success. Because if you're gauging next to somebody with 1 million followers and that's your goal, not that that isn't aspirational, but I think you're losing the point of social media, which is connections and meaningful connections that hopefully are beneficial both directions.
Yes.
So I think start with understanding what you're really here to do. Second, I would say set objectives that are reasonable to your life. So again, don't set a goal of, I want to grow 5,000 followers this month, because realistically, you don't control that. The algorithm does in many ways, the followers do in many ways. Set a goal of, I'm going to post 3 times a week for the next month, and then do not miss those 3 times. You know, consistency creates the habit here and creates the actual following base. The value will come as you get more confident in you know, speaking to a camera like we're doing right now. And I think that's the last part. Have something to say of value. Social media right now is just noise. Everybody's a coach. Everybody has a class. Everybody will teach you everything, and most of them haven't even done the thing that they're teaching you. I think you really need to focus on what value do you deliver to an audience that would A, get them to come back and trust you for more value, but B, hopefully be immediately useful and impactful in their life. Like, answer a question that they have, solve a problem that they're probably dealing with, inform them on an issue they may have missed, right? Like, you don't have to aim for the skies here. Just do something above what the average person is doing. And I think, you know, if you go in with those 3, like, level expectations, delivering value, genuine connections, how could you miss?
So when you're talking about presence with your followers, what would you say your connection is? Like, what are you aiming if they come to Matt Thomas's page? Like, what should they be walking away with?
Absolutely. For me, that is driven by what value they came to the page for. And I try to delineate that so the conversation is directed up front, right? So even if you go to my Calendly page and you book time, there's several different ways to book time. We can have a buyer consultation. We can have a seller consultation. We can have a one-on-one just generally about the market. We can have an investor conversation. So every direct dialogue is slightly different. And on top of that, I do actually help people with social media one-to-one. So maybe you're contacting me for that, right? But each conversation is pre-dictated by what are you trying to get out of it. And what I hope people walk away from is I will sincerely give you my truest opinion and most valuable insight on whatever we sat down to discuss. So if it's buying in Chicagoland, I'll give you my honest opinion. If it's selling your home now versus in 6 months, I'll give you my honest opinion, backed by data and backed by, you know, experience.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there's nothing more important to me than data driving my decisions.
Absolutely.
Give me the data, put the data in front of me, let me analyze it, and then let my intuition take over from there on dissecting the data based on that, and then being able to move forward. So I don't know you well enough to understand your real estate story. Can you kind of walk me through how you became an expert in Chicago real estate?
Funny enough, I started in data out of college. So I went to Notre Dame and I was a marketing major. And so for a long time, my brain has lived in sales and marketing, which is just all focused on consumer behavior and how to properly position yourself to help people solve problems. I graduated. I went immediately into tech sales. I sold big enterprise data storage. So we sold solutions into mid to enterprise size customers, would store, for the most part, like employee data or repository data. But we had some pretty big customers, including like the Department of Defense and McDonald's and some other big companies. So I got my feet wet with solution-based sales and selling in a corporate environment. And what I came to learn is, as exciting as that was, and as really truly, as much as I love the community of people that worked in tech, I didn't love working in B2B sales at that time. It didn't feel like what I wanted to be doing with my career. I felt like I had more to offer on a one-to-one consumer-facing basis. And I grew up in a real estate household where I had seen my mother grow a real estate business. She's now been in it for over 30 years. And I knew what that looked like. More importantly, I knew the relationships that came from running a great real estate business. You know, at the end of the day in tech, I may have closed some deals and made some pretty decent friendships, but they equally could have picked a different technology and I had very little control over it. I think in real estate, I'm working with clients to accomplish something very personal, very emotional. And my goal is just to be the center post, to guide them using, like you said, data and logic to get them to the goal that they're trying to accomplish. So that was what drove me. I mean, it really was just seeking to be closer to my customer base and to deliver a value that was more direct to my clients. And now that was January 2018 when I left tech. So here we are, almost 6 years later, and things are still going well.
Was there a time period where you were contemplating leaving tech? And like, what did that transition look like between that? Was there something that pushed you over the edge? Like if someone's watching this and was like, man, I'm trying to get out of my W-2 and shift into something more with real estate, you know, what would you tell them to fixate on? Kind of a loaded question.
No,
like,
that's a great question because I think there definitely was. I knew I wanted to leave tech at least 12, maybe 16 months before I actually did it. And for me, it all culminates, and I've told this story before, but I was actually in Las Vegas. I was being recognized on stage by my company as being the top sales rep in the Midwest.
Oh, no
which should be.
What company was it?
This is for NetApp. Oh. NetApp is a Fortune 500 data storage company. They're international. I don't know what they're doing now. At the time, they were roughly a $7 billion company. Who knows where they're at now? But yeah, I mean, large scale. And I felt like I had reached, I don't want to call it the pinnacle. You can always do better. And there were many reps that did better than I did day to day. But in that moment, I was being honored. And while standing on stage, the thoughts that went through my head in progression were, holy shit, I don't want to be those guys, the people handing me the awards. I don't want to do the work again involved in getting to where I'm standing right now. And it made me feel sad that I had accomplished something so huge. And in that moment, I felt, I don't know if the word is regret or just some sort of unease about doing it again and the path that it was putting me on. And so for me, that answered the question. You know, I recognized then I just wasn't where I wanted to be. I knew that I had skills that I had developed, thankfully, because of NetApp. And I was trying to be gracious in the way that I left, which is why it took time. I wanted to do it the right way, and I wanted to make sure I took my accounts the right way and handed them off. But then I left. I made a clean cut, tried to keep as many of those relationships intact as I could, and I still stay in touch with many people. In fact, my first ever real estate transaction was my boss, who I resigned from at NetApp. So, you know, there is a way to leave without burning the bridges. And keeping those relationships intact.
Interesting. So your boss was your first client?
Yeah. 3 months into my real estate career, my old boss called me and he said, Matt, you know, I'm going to start a coaching business and I need to lease a commercial space in Chicago. Can you help me with that? And I had never done a commercial lease. And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. I can help you with that. Sure. So we found him a studio space over in Old Town. Really, really cool, actually. It was down like this private alleyway. Yeah, and he was there for a couple of years. I think now he's since moved out of that space, but it was a cool project to be a part of.
So would you, if you were doing it again, is there anything that you would do sooner as a new real estate agent?
Ooh, do sooner. When I got in the business, I am very thankful that I focused actually on social media out the gate. My marketing brain, that was the easiest decision to make ever. And I'll put it to you like this. How much effort would it take to get 1,000 people in a room? How much effort would it take to get 1,000,000 people in a room? Could you even possibly do it? On social media, you absolutely can. I had several videos, some of which were, in my opinion, relatively low brain power to put together, like memes, that have gone viral, hundreds of thousands or close to 1,000,000 views. And the exposure that comes from that, and for free, right? These are not boosted. I just created it and put it out there. It's for free now because views. Those people come back to the page, hopefully get value, stick around, and some of them have become clients. So where else in the world can you get maximum exposure for no money and grow a brand? And I think that some people fail to realize that early on in social media or early on in their real estate career, and they don't focus on the branding side of it. I am so thankful now, years later, that I started where I did. Because if you Google me, which, Google me, bro, you can see how many videos I've created, and they're all about Chicago real estate or how to buy or how to sell. Or, I enter many conversations already having answered the experience question. People aren't like, oh, who are you? And they've watched my videos, or they've seen me on social media. They reached out to me. They maybe watched all my videos. People will be like, I saw this thing you posted in 2022. I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's weird. So, it's a little weird to have fans in a sense, but it actually serves a business purpose. That is what we're all trying to accomplish when we go to coffee meetings, right? You get over the ease or unease of not knowing each other. You establish a new friendship and relationship, and then maybe there's an opportunity to do business together down the line.
Yeah. So starting out, rule number one, dive into social media right away.
Yeah, I think so. And start tracking and developing an email list from that. The value of social media is making real connections, right? So if you, I'll give you a prime example. You can take this right now. Let's say you just started an account today. It's day one, new real estate at Instagram.com, right? And that's your handle. You want to put some value out to your followers in the world. Create a home buyer packet, just like something of value that teaches first-time buyers how the process works, a guide of what they can expect. Insert the referral partners you like to work with if you want to get real creative with it and make it valuable for everybody. Make that something that people have to register an email to get from you. It's that simple. Just, put it on a landing page, make it so that they register with a name and an email. You send them that booklet. If you started doing that, or if I had started doing that 5 years ago, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of contacts I would have at this point, free, just inbound that are clicking for information. But then you get the information from them. You can create a newsletter, an email list. You create opportunities to create relationships. And I think, whether it's social media or whether you're just getting involved in networking groups, or if you're involved in charity groups, whatever it is, networking needs to become an intentional job if you just got started in real estate. And when you go to these events, when you go to these social media things, you are there with the purpose of collecting contacts to make relationships, and then eventually relationships open doors to opportunities.
Yeah. I know for me, when I started my networking, it's like, I think that's one of everyone, at least it was one of my greatest fears, right? Walking up to someone who I don't know to introduce myself to anyone. Is there anything that you did to get yourself over that fear? Would you consider yourself a natural introvert or extrovert?
I will tell you, I lived on the Northeast for many years, and I don't know if it's a little bit of an edge or whatever that comes from being near Philly or New York, but I don't have any shame about just entering a conversation and being direct. I know that that's not everybody's vibe, so I won't just say everyone should do it. But what I will say is, genuinely, I believe as a business professional, I like people who I know care. I feel like I enjoy talking to people who are good people. They care about what they're there to talk about. And they're not trying to sell me. They're just genuinely approaching on the fact that they would like to get to know me. And what I would encourage everybody, to walk away with maybe is, I can't tell you how many relationships have just started with a compliment. Walk up to somebody and say, I love your watch. Hey, what do you do? that could start an entire business relationship worth God knows how much, or just a friendship. You know, not everything's about business. But I
Yeah.
think if you just start from an earnest approach of being nice and being genuine and trying to get to know people, networking becomes a lot easier. And I think the person on the receiving end of it can immediately sense the difference between the person coming in because they're waiting to talk and do their like 30-second sales pitch and hopefully you're going to buy from them, and the person who comes up and is like, hey, cool watch, man. Like, what are you doing here? What do you do? Why are you here? You know, have a genuine conversation. They're probably feeling as awkward as you are.
Yeah, that's so good. I actually, in my networking, I follow the 3 C's: confidence, compliments, and commonalities. And, so I walk up with confidence, say, hey, my name's Jonathan Clem, and, find one thing, right? Earring, shirt, watch,
Anything,
bracelet,
but yeah.
necklace. And because then it's also, you're like looking in a real way to compliment them. Like you actually genuinely like that. And then once you get the compliment in, then you look for commonalities. And then as soon as you find that, it's just like smooth sailing. You already have your best friend. And so I always remind myself and anyone who's, struggling with the networking is just remember the 3 C's: confidence, compliments, and commonalities.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think, commonalities is one that works out. I've noticed that sometimes when you put everyone at ease by just recognizing the situation for what it is, that makes it a lot easier too. I've started many conversations and be like, this is a little awkward, huh? And everybody will laugh because it is, right? And, so sometimes just being yourself and recognizing what's happening in the room is a very valuable way, being present.
Yeah. I love diffusing the room, diffusing everything. I did a presentation not that long ago for my homeboy Jeffrey Ma, and I had not prepared quite as well as I like to, and I got up immediately and it was just like, guys, I'm probably the least prepared speaker you guys have coming in here, but I'm gonna add a ton of value, and boom, 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 boom. But like just diffusing it, or just like walking up there and be like, hey, I'm not comfortable up here. I'm not a natural extrovert. And it's just like people resonate with that because they're feeling the same way you are, right? And it's all about kind of making those meaningful connections so that there's something relatable from whatever person's looking at you, talking with you. And then that instantly is like an easy bond to kind of start talking about.
And it's real, that's true with social. It's real with interacting. I mean, it's just, you're not putting on a fake face. You're not pretending to be something you're not. It's just, look, very really, I'm probably underprepared, but I'm excited for the opportunity. That's a cool thing to be self-aware enough to know.
Yeah. So I'm a new real estate agent. I'm hopping on social media. I'm creating content. I'm adding value. I'm getting emails. They're going into a CRM. Then what is my
do
next
use
step?
a CRM. Like, I love Excel. I use Excel. I need to get out of Excel. Use a CRM. Like, it's just so much easier in your life.
Yeah, so we use HubSpot at Quality Builders. Amazing platform. So
we have Darren Warner uses KV Core. KV Core is fantastic. So yeah.
And so after I got the email, right, what is my next step after that? So I want to add value through social media. I want to set up some type of offer where it's, buyer's guide, real estate investment calculator. Then they give me my email. What is my next step to kind of nurture that email and get a deal?
Some of this takes time to set up if you really want to do it in a tactical way, right? Like, there is a world where, depending on how people register for information, you segregate them out into different filters in your CRM. So I registered for investment information. I am now on the investment interest campaign. That's all I see. That's all I look at. I registered on the Chicago local information campaign. All I want to know is local Chicago information, right? And some people do take the time to do that. I will tell you up front, that is hours of time to make that many different, platforms of engagement. And if you want to keep it simple, really just a simple approach, think about ways that you can continue to add value to the audience that you're developing. So part of that is knowing what your audience is. And you've probably heard this before, figuring out your niche or who you work with, who your ideal client is. But if your ideal client, if everything that you're putting out and collecting emails for is first-time homebuyers in Chicago, you should be creating continual value for first-time homebuyers in Chicago. That is what you've expressed to the world you do. That is what these people registered for information on. that's where you should be meeting them at their need with, right? So part of this, it's hard to answer with a blanket statement of you should just send them this information. And, frankly, I think a lot of real estate agents rely on information that's just fluff. It'll be like, oh, here's the baseball schedule, or here's 4 pie eating contests in the neighborhood this week. And like, those are cool and they're fun, but that pie eating contest info needs to be underneath a neighborhood market update that gives solid data for homeowners who actually want to know something, right? Like, do the soft and the hard. And I think part of that is figuring out, what are you talking about? Is it Chicago? Is it home buying? Are you an Irving Park expert and you're just going to send Irving Park info? That would be super valuable for Irving Park, right? So you have to kind of figure that out.
So as a new agent, where would you say the best place to get your data is to provide that kind of hard data in the email?
I still think the MLS is the best. I mean, we can make it look sexier than some of the outputs that the MLS does, but InfoSparks, the MLS, I mean, you're getting live feed data on what's happening in the marketplace. I work with Airbnb investors, so I also share data from like AirDNA or things like that. But if you're just talking true sales data in the marketplace, the MLS is your go-to resource.
Yeah, there was another company that someone just told me for Airbnb. Have you heard of this one called Rabu?
Oh, somebody else just asked me about this. I haven't used it. I can't vouch for it, but it'd be interesting to see how different the data is between AirDNA and Rabu.
Yeah, so if anyone's out there and interested, besides AirDNA, which was the only one I knew about for a while, it's called Rabu. That's RABBU.com. Yeah, I have one Airbnb still, and now it's like next to impossible to even get your freaking license in Chicago. Yeah. So it's like I'm holding on to my license for dear life.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm sitting right now. I'm in my home, and my basement is an in-law suite. So I have a license. That basement is rented out for Airbnb, and I manage 2 Airbnbs in Peoria as well, right across the street from Bradley University. Both Peoria and Chicago have license laws, which have changed a million times over. I mean, essentially in Chicago now, if you're not a live-in occupant, or in some cases selectively a multi-unit owner that's applying for 1 unit to get approved, there's no applications being approved. I mean, it's got to be your home or select multi-unit situation, and that's it.
Yeah, the workaround, because I have it in my building, and I was able to set up a bank account with my lower unit, and that's all they're looking for, but it's still just like almost impossible, which is interesting. I'm sure like the hotels and everything started cracking down on that, but for the people who kept their licenses and still have them, like, in my opinion, it's kind of a good thing, because the market was so saturated for so long, and probably over like last 4 years, that my Airbnb like was slowly kind of like declining, and the only thing that was kind of keeping me afloat was that I'd had it for so long and I had a ton of good reviews.
I've noticed the same. I think bookings went down. Chicago or Chicagoland is certainly not as bad as there was a point recently where Phoenix had twice as many Airbnb listings as they did homes for sale. That's a functionally broken market. I don't even understand how that can happen. So we don't have problems like that. I will say what's interesting to me is there's a big push. Sometimes you hear people talking about we need to either improve regulations or add more regulations, maybe take them away. It doesn't change the fact that 90%, 95% of condo buildings downtown don't allow for short-term rental. So even if there was a license that you could get, you still have to own a single-family residence in most cases, maybe a walk-up if they started becoming Airbnb friendly, but like none of these high-rises in the ideal neighborhoods for people coming to Chicago, none of these large-scale, they just don't allow it. It's against the regulations. So.
Yeah. Kind of stinks. I feel like they could come up with something that allowed something, 2%.
I've seen some buildings recently have fully transitioned. 70 East Walton, I think, is a building now that has furnished units available on, I don't know if it's month to month, but you can do it at least 6 to 12 months in a rolling cycle. So the whole building is being converted to be used for that capacity. But other than that, I haven't seen a ton of it. And I don't know if I'm for or against, a flooding of Airbnbs to the downtown market, but I do think separate of the regulation, you've got this entire world of condo board owners that don't want to deal with it.
Yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but that's kind of how regulation works. As over time it gets tighter and tighter and tighter, and those who can figure out their way around it continue to be successful. I kind of wanted to close real quick talking about Chicago real estate. So
Yep.
winter's coming, interest rates are still high, buyers, you know, the inventory is still low. What is your biggest tip to buyers to get deals under contract? Because I've found it to be pretty hard myself. Like if you're talking to new buyers, what are your top 3 tips to get deals under contract?
Yeah. That's a great question because it is difficult right now. I don't know if this is a tip, but I would just say general piece of advice: anticipate there's going to be some failure or some pain along the way.
Yeah.
You know, there's just many multiple offer situations that are happening, especially on homes that are move-in ready. So it's tough to imagine that you're just going to win the first one. You might, but you very well might not. So just anticipate it's going to be tough. Tips to actually make yourself successful in buying right now. Number 1, ask better questions. I have done so many listings and I get so many offers. I can't tell you how many times I get an offer and it's just sent to my email. Nobody calls me, nobody texts me. They don't remind me who they were at the showing. They didn't ask me what my seller wanted. They just send me a document that's filled out. It's not insulting. Every offer is appreciated. But what you miss is an opportunity to craft something that actually means something to me and my seller, right? And I think the buyers, in my experience, ask the right questions, particularly when would you like to close? What is important to you in a timeline? Outside of price, are there any factors in the contract that you're particularly aware of or paying attention to? Even just adding in the as-is clause if you're worried it's competitive and you want to do one more kicker, right? Like these are contractual factors you can pull, but you should have a better understanding of the seller before you pull them, and that involves asking the right questions. So number 1, ask better questions. Number 2, I think if you are not aligned with a real estate agent, you're missing a huge opportunity right now because there are a ton of off-market properties. That market is hyperactive. Some brokerages, whether you agree with it or not, they have their own thing going, like Compass, and I think Caldwell Banker does it too. They have true pocket listings, so they have like internal dialogue. We have access to it when we email them and get access to that list, right? But if you're not working within the inner real estate world, you're not seeing the private listing network, you're not seeing the internal logs, you're not seeing the coming soon, and you know, you're not talking with someone like me. I have 4 pocket listings in the next 3 months, but if you're not calling me, I can't just publicly share that information right now. So a lot of this involves aligning with the right resource to make sure that they're hunting for you, right? You don't have to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
I would say the last thing, if you want to be hyper successful right now, you need to have a strong understanding of the financing piece. I've noticed this real aversion that exists to talking with a lender and getting pre-approved. I don't know if it's because of the credit check. I don't know if it's just because lending is scary right now. Every news article is about how bad the rates are, and they will start with an 8 most likely, so they're not great. But you need to understand it. You know, the only way to make a buying decision with an educated mindset based on data, in my opinion, you need to start with having a conversation with the lender to understand your affordability in this marketplace. The next part of that is to look at the marketplace, and you might very well decide that what's available for you right now at your affordability is not something you're comfortable with, in which case maybe it makes sense to rent for a little bit longer. But you can only establish that if you figure out that comfort level, right? And that comfort level will remain if you talk to the lender and they're saying they can give you up to $2,000 a month, you know, in lending dollars, then you can make some budgetary decisions. Are you comfortable with the budget around those numbers? Do you need to be less? Could you go a little bit higher? What happens when interest rates move will only dictate your future if you understand what you can do right now, right? And I think too many times people are like, oh, I love this house. It just listed. Oh, it has multiple offers. I don't even have a pre-approval. So while we're supposed to be talking offer strategy, they're still talking to the lender to figure out what's possible, what is a buy down, what programs do you have. Like that should have been done. You know, you should have done that months ago. So that's my biggest piece of advice, you know, is prepare in advance. The only way you can prepare to be involved to make an offer is go talk to a real estate agent and go talk to a lender.
Yeah, no, I love all 3 of those. Ask better questions. I think that's a key to life.
Yeah.
More importantly
Yeah.
than anything, right? The quality of our life is the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. 2, align with your agent. And yeah, I can't agree more. The number of agents that send blind offers is just ridiculous to me. You know,
Blows my mind.
I will never ever once send a blind offer. I'm picking up the phone. Like that's my personally as an agent, which I don't transact a ton, but like that is my greatest asset. Getting on the phone with someone, getting the details, schmoozing them down. Hey, you're not going to like this offer. It's probably lower than you're expecting. You know, you just want to set the groundwork that you're being upfront, transparent, that you're super interested. It's like, but I want to get this deal done, you know? So it's like, you know,
And it's
anyone
so much
who's not,
different when it's prepared like that, right? When you preface by saying, hey, listen, we love the home. We're going to send you an offer. I'm going to warn you, it's going to be a little lower than you want to see, but this is, listen, this is what my buyers can do right now. They're going to give you their best offer because this is what they can afford.
Yeah.
That's such an earnest way to approach an offer. Like, what seller would reject that angrily, right? If it's the best they can do, it's the best they can do. But if you don't call me and say that, you just send me the low ball off. I'm like, what is this? Why did you send me this without calling me? You know, you have to set the expectations. You have to have a conversation, you know, and to your point, smooch it up, like make it easier for everybody to understand what's actually being presented.
yeah. And then align with your financing. And yeah, I think you have to be proactive, right? And for me, it's like, I'm not even talking to anyone that is not locked and loaded, ready to pull the trigger when we say now, because it's like, that is the most crucial part of any deal is speed,
Yeah.
you know, and if you don't have your ducks in a row, like, you shouldn't be talking to me, you know?
Well, and unfortunately, you'll have people who just don't quite realize the severity of things, right? And, you know, we'll warn them, we'll remind them, we'll tell you 50 times, you got to get ready for this. And then the multiple offer comes and it's best and final due tomorrow at 10 and we see it at 4:30 at night. I can't make them wait, nor do they have any legal responsibility to do so. So they're going to go, you know, the train's leaving. If you have a ticket, you can get on and try. Like, if you don't, I got nothing, you know, I can't make the process wait for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But yeah, no, we got to jump on again. This wasn't long enough for sure. But yeah, I want to get more tips. I want to talk more about Chicago. You know, there's so many things that are moving and shaking in the city. I love the city for two reasons. I always say, you know, there's a plethora of multifamily properties that need to be renovated, and there's price points at every level. So I can go buy a property for $50K, or I can go spend $5 million. And, you know, there's not a better city to invest in my opinion, in Chicago. And like, the most important thing, in my opinion, is getting the right team. You know, when you have the right agent, when you have the right lender, when you have the right contractor, when you have all these people on your team who understand and are communicating together, like, that's when, you know, you get these offers that go as smooth as possible. And right now, that's what's going to get deals done.
Well, and that at a time when more cancellations are happening than ever before, that's what you need. These transactions aren't always easy, but with the right team, it should feel a lot smoother than it would if you didn't have the right resources in place. So I think that's 100% correct. The better you align yourself to make things easier, the more likely you are to have a successful home buying process. And I'm always happy to talk about Chicago. So anytime you want to do this, you just call. I agree with you. There's 77 neighborhoods. Most people think of Chicago in like 3. So they're like, I can't find anything affordable. I'm like, yeah, in Lincoln Park and Lakeview, you're probably priced out and you need to give up Old Town. Have you thought about insert any of the other 74 here, you know? But it just takes time, practice, and a little bit of experience.
Yeah. All right, brother. Well, let's connect again soon, and we'll hop on again in the very near future.
Thank you. You have a good one. Good
All right.
talking with you.
Later, dude.